So now to continue into this block of new frontiers with Causal AI, it's my great pleasure to invite here next Matheus Facure, who is a very well-known figure in causal inference. He's the author of this beautiful online free book, The Causal Inference for Brave and True. He also wrote Causal Inference in Python, a highly useful and popular book in industry. He was a senior scientist at Nubank, one of the biggest fintech outside Asia. And he's here to share extensively also to share his extensive experience with us, in particular to discuss from prediction to action and uplift modeling for debt collection. So Matheus, it's really with great pleasure that I invite you here and to take the floor, if we can say it like this, on this online event.
And thanks, Philip, because with you coming first, I don't have to explain a lot of stuff. So I'll assume everyone was paying attention to Philip talk, which is going to make my life a lot easier. So I'm going to, actually, I was kind of a bit of afraid that Philip will talk the same thing as I was going to talk, which is, it's kind of the same, but it's from a different angle. So I'm going to keep my presentation here. I was kind of thinking about swapping last minute, but I think I'm going to keep this one. We are also going to talk about churn. Just a little bit about me. I am a retired economist. Quentin did a really good job introducing me. I wrote some books about about causal inference, but what I want to say actually is why I got interested in causal inference. Actually, I'm first and foremost an economist, which basically means I like making good decisions. So the job of an economist is optimizing the decision making in a firm, right? This is microeconomics 101. You figure out whatever the company is optimizing, and you figure out how to optimize that, basically. So how to make that decision. And in my life, a lot of the tasks that I had to do turned out that using machine learning was not the right approach, which led me to causal inference in the end. So I'm more in causal inference for the practical reason. Like I understand the academic challenge, but it's more of a decision-making tool. And what I want to talk about it here is how can it be used as a decision-making tool. And again, we're going to talk about churn, and specifically, we're going to talk about treatment effect heterogeneity. So what is treatment effect heterogeneity? Philip already talked a little bit. Let me just recap what it is. It's basically the realization that different people respond differently to a treatment. So completely hypothetical scenario. This did not happen to anyone whatsoever, but let's imagine that we have a pandemic, right? So let's say that we have a pandemic with a new virus, and there is a treatment, but the treatment is very scarce. So we cannot treat everyone. The treatment is kind of scarce. It's a new vaccine, it's a new virus, a new vaccine. So we have to figure out how are we going to allocate this expensive or scarce treatment to a massive population. So what do we do? The right approach would be to let's figure out whoever has the higher effect. So what is an effect in this case? Is who is going to benefit the most from the vaccine, meaning if we give the vaccine, the chance of surviving is the highest, and if we don't give the vaccine, the chance of survival is the lowest. So we have to think about this two hypothetical situation, a person with the vaccine and the same person without the vaccine. And if the difference between those two is the highest, then we have a very high effect. So this is the right way to prioritize a scarce treatment, is figuring out what is the biggest effect. And then we should like rank order people, figuring out which one has the highest effect, and then target the vaccine to those that will benefit the most in terms of the chance of survival increasing the most. Like the key word here is increasing. We want to target people where situation with vaccine compared to without vaccine is the most different. And there are a couple of ways to do that. Maybe we figure out that the ones that benefit the most from the vaccines are the ones that I don't know, they have obesities, or maybe the older ones or pregnant woman. So we might find profiles of customers or not customers in this case, of people that benefit the most, and then we allocate the vaccine to those customers first. So what am I talking about this is because I want to highlight that there are two main reasons for us to focus on treatment effect heterogeneity. The first one is that we have a scarce treatment, so we cannot treat everyone, right? If we could treat everyone, there is no reason for us to engage in effect heterogeneity. Let's just give the vaccine to everyone, right? There's no reason for us to rank order people according to whoever has the highest treatment. A second reason for us to engage in treatment effect heterogeneity is, let's say that we can treat everyone, but the treatment is not beneficial for everyone. There are some segments of the population where treating yields a negative effect. So that's a second reason for us to engage in treatment effect heterogeneity, is to figure out if maybe the treatment is cheap, we can do it to everyone, we can apply it to everyone, but we don't want to apply it to everyone because some people, or if you're working in a company, some customers will respond negatively to the treatment. So let's now come back to a more business scenario, which is churn. So let's say that we have this business problem where we are having a problem with people churning, and we have a treatment which we can apply to those customers. But this is a very expensive treatment. We are giving discounts, coupon discounts. So every time we give a treatment, it effectively decreases our profit because it's just a discount. It directly impacts the bottom line. So we need to figure out how to prioritize customers, so how to rank order them to figure out who to give discounts to. And the way that this is traditionally done, or the way that I've seen it traditionally done, and I've engaged in before when I was primarily working with data science and machine learning, traditional machine learning. So the traditional way that this is done is, well, let's build a very powerful machine learning model to predict whoever is going to churn, right? So let's just estimate this. We're good at this, right? We're data science. We can take X and we can predict Y. So let's predict churn from a bunch of information from the customers, purchase history, age, whatever we can find about the customers. Let's try to predict their churn. And if we have this good machine learning model, why not just order customers according to the prediction of this machine learning model, right? So maybe what one person can say, and again, these are arguments that I've heard. I did not invent this, but these are arguments that I've heard. So one of the argument can be something like, we just need to worry about the ones that are at risk of churning. So what this would imply is that we would take our very good machine learning model, we would rank customers according to high probability of churn, low probability of churn, and we would treat the ones with the high probability of churn, right? So these are the customers with high probability of churn. If we just follow this argument, we just need to worry about the ones that are at risk of churn because the other ones will not churn. We don't have to worry about them. Then we would prioritize the treatment. We would give discounts to the ones that have high probability of churn. And the issue with this argument is that first, it's very convincing, right? It makes intuitive sense. It's something I can buy, right? If someone says this in a meeting, in a non-technical meeting, it makes a lot of sense. Why am I going to spend dollars on customers that are not at risk of churning, right? But this argument is not entirely right. And the way to see that it's not entirely right is that because I have also seen the other argument, which also is very intuitive and makes also a lot of sense, right? And the other argument goes a little bit like this. Look, the ones that have a high probability of churn, they are lost causes. It won't matter what I do to them, right? If I give discounts to them, I'll just lose money. So let's focus on the ones that we can secure, the ones that we have not lost yet. So let's focus on the ones that have low probability of churning. And again, this also makes very intuitive sense. if someone says this in a meeting, it makes sense. It's hard to argue against, and it's the complete opposite of the argument before. So we're kind of stuck, right? If we just use the machine learning model, it's not entirely obvious which ones should we treat, right? We rank order. We have a very good machine learning model. This model is, let's say, it's almost perfect. It can predict very well which customers are going to churn. Hence, it can rank order customers very well according to higher probability of churn versus low probability of churn. So the problem is not in the model, right? The model rank orders customers very well. It's just that it's hard to go from the model to the actual decision, right? So that's the missing link. We have the machine learning model, but we don't have the bridge that goes from probability of default or of churning, probability of churning to treatment. Who do I actually allocate the discount to, right? And that's the link that causal machine learning answer, particular treatment effect heterogeneity model answers, right? So let's now swap the model. Instead of having a good prediction model, let's say that we have something, maybe, I'm not going to go into the details here. We could use, let's say, double machine learning, for instance, but it can be any other causal model here. So we have the same customers, but now instead of a very good prediction model, what we have is we have a good effect heterogeneity model. And what does this actually tell us? This model, what it outputs, this is very crucial. So this model outputs what is the expected effect for this particular customer, or for a customer that has this set of covariates. So what is the predicted effect given a set of characteristics of the customers, right? And maybe it's a high effect, maybe it's a low effect, maybe it's even a negative effect, right? Although in this situation, it's hard to imagine someone which would have a negative effect of churning if we give a discount. So maybe just high effects and low effect. And what we do now is that we rank order customers by the predicted effect of those customers, right? And now the answer is much more clear, because we should give the treatment to whomever has the churn probability decreases the most if we give the discounts to. And again, the key word here is decreases. So this could be the ones that have the high probability of treatment, of the high probability of churn. This one can be the ones that have low probability of churn. I don't really know what's the probability of churn for these customers on the top here. What I know is that they will benefit the most from the treatment. If I give them the treatment, the chance of churning will decrease the most. And again, you might ask, how can I build such model that predicts the effect? Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to talk about this, but you can use, for instance, double machine learning, or just keep in mind that there are models that are able to produce this sort of quantity, which is what is the effect given a set of information that I know for that particular customer. So again, if I have this, then it becomes much more easy to go from the model, the machine learning model, to the actual decision. So that's kind of what causal AI is solving. It's solving the bridge. It's solving the problem of, I have a very good model that makes very good predictions, but now I need to make decisions on top of those predictions. And how can I do that? It becomes a lot easier to make those decisions if the model it's predicting exactly the effect of those decisions. So that's why causal AI is very useful. Now, this is the key that I want you to take from this talk. What I'll say now is just some extra. So if you understand up until this point, this is already enough. Just to be clear, to re-emphasize what I mean by what is the model predicting, what is this effect here, because this is kind of the challenges, right? So Quentin said to me, oh, you have to give a talk on the frontier of causal AI. And this is the frontier and the challenging stuff, right? So what is the effect? The effect is what is the probability of churn if I give a discount minus the probability of churn if I don't give a discount, given a set of information that I know for the customers. For instance, for I don't know, for customers that spend a lot in the past, this might be different from customers that don't spend a lot on the past, something like that. So depending on the information of the customer, this quantities might be different. So that's why the X is here. Now, the trick here is that, the hard part here is that this is actually not observable, right? So what this is implying is that there are two theoretical quantities that we cannot see, right? So what is this? So let's say that each pair of points in this chart here is a customer, and each color represents a situation for that same customer. So blue, oops, this, I guess this is, let me just flip this real life to make it more intuitive. Yeah, there we go, much better. So blue is what would happen to churn if we don't give discounts, and orange would be what would happen to churn if we give the discount, if treated. And we can see that given the treatment, for every customer, it decreases the churn, right? Because we go from, let's say, this point here, which has a higher churn under no treatment, and then we go to a low churn under treatment. So for all the customers, theoretically, we think it decreases churn, but we can see that for some customer, for instance, those here on the right, we can see that the effect is much higher than for those here on the left. And the hard part is that for any of the particular customers, I cannot observe both points. So if I cannot observe both points, I cannot calculate the individual effect for any of the individual customers. So what does this mean is that it leaves us in a very hard situation, and where I think like the more interesting part of the research is going, at least what I like to focus on, is that, okay, we have a very good machine learning model, or actually, we have a machine learning model that predicts the effect, but how the hell are we going to evaluate this model if I cannot observe the ground truth, right? So I have a model, but how can I claim that it is good if I don't have the ground truth to compare the model predictions against? And this makes causal AI much more challenging than traditional AI, because the ground truth is not known, right? So if you're building a predictive model, right, you're predicting churn, you know if the customer churned or didn't churn, right? So you know the ground truth, and you can compute metrics for the machine learning model, ROC AUC, log loss, because you have y predictions and y actuals. In causal AI, you don't have y actuals, right? You don't observe the y actuals. Fundamentally, this is the fundamental problem of causal inference. You can only observe a customer under one treatment, and for you to compute the effect, you need the customer under both treatments. And again, the challenge, I think, now moving forward is how can we figure out good ways, good methods to evaluate these kinds of models without looking at the ground truth, right? And again, we don't have time to go through all of this. These are very complex because it's a very complicated problem. There's a free book that I have. You can check it out. I go deep into those details here. Suffice to say that we have to rely on grouping. Like, we cannot look at a single customer, so we have to look at a group of customers, and that's the direction we go. But again, just as a side note, this I think is where things get interesting when we are talking about causal AIs. How do we actually know if this effect model is any good, right? And there is the easy way, which is put it in production and see if it makes more money than the old one. But ideally, we want to figure out if it's good before putting it into production. So again, this is where I think the interesting parts and the challenges that we have today are going to develop. So that's it. Thanks for the time. I hope I didn't go too much over time, and I'll take questions on the chat. I don't know if we answer questions here or I'm way above time, and then we can answer them on the chat.
Thanks a lot, Matheus. It's always a pleasure to have you and to listen to you. So yes, basically we are a bit over time, and as Kalut is tight, let me ask you just one question that was asked very early to you. And then if you have time, you can indeed answer within the Q&A button, and you can write the answers. Do you have a clear example that you're able to share, but sometimes it's difficult, how causal findings in practice influence a real world decision, like really flipped and convinced decision makers?
Yeah, so the biggest one that I have was when I was working in a bank, and what we had is that so basically the biggest challenge, there are two decisions that a bank has to make, which is what is the interest it's going to charge, and how much money in the form of credit to give to customers. And we were approaching these problems in a predictive way. So we predicted, let's say we predicted interest revenues, and we predicted spending behavior of the customer. And what we figured out is, because of lots of nuances that I don't have time to explain, the better our models got at predictions, the worse our decision making got. So we were giving lower and lower lines, credit lines, because our model were getting better and better and better. And this was very hard for us to wrap our heads around, right? How the hell are we getting worse at making the decision if the machine learning model is getting better and better and better? And it took time for us to actually, it was, once we knew about causal inference, it was clear what the answer was. So it took, I don't know, 2 months for us to figure out the answer, but it took us another 2 years to convince everyone that that was the answer. So it is hard to make this culture expand, because it's counterintuitive and it's not something folks are used to. Maybe nowadays it's becoming a little bit easier, but again, that's just some reality check that it's not like on a week that you're going to solve this organizational problem.